Egill Saga Chapter 40 of Egil's and Skallagrím's Games. Skallagrim took much pleasure in trials of strength and games. He liked to talk about such. Ball play was then a common game. Plenty of strong men there were at that time in the neighborhood, but not one of strength to match with Skallagrim. He was now somewhat stricken in years. There was a man named Thord, son of Grani, at Granastead, who was of great promise. He was then young. Very fond he was of Egill, Skallagrím's son. Egill often engaged in wrestling. He was headstrong and hot-tempered, but all had the sense to teach their sons to give way to Egill. A game of ball was held at White River Dale in the early winter, to which was a great gathering of people from all the countryside. Thither went many of Skallagrím's household to the game. Chief among them was Thord, Grani's son. Egill asked Thord to let him go with him to the game. He was then in his 7th winter. Thord let him do so, and Egill mounted behind him. But when they came to the play meeting, then the men made up sides for the play. Many small boys had come there too, and they made up a game for themselves. For this also sides were chosen. Egill was matched to play against a boy named Grim, son of Heg, of Hegstead. Grim was 10 or 11 years old and strong for his age. But when they played together, Egill got the worst of it, and Grim made all he could of this advantage. Then Egill got angry and lifted up the bat and struck Grim, whereupon Grim seized him and threw him down with a heavy fall, and handled him rather roughly, and said he would thrash him if he did not behave. But when Egill got to his feet, he went out of the game, and the boys hooted at him. Egill went to Thord and told him what had been done. Thord said, "I will go with you, and we will be avenged on them." He gave into his hands a halberd that he had been carrying. Such weapons were then customary. They went where the boys' game was. Grim had now got the ball and was running away with it, and the other boys after him. Then Egill bounded upon Grim, and drove the axe into his head, so that it at once pierced his brain. After this Egill and Thord went away to their own people. The Myramen ran to their weapons, and so did either party. Olaf Halt, with his following, ran to help the Borgar men, who were thus far the larger number, and they parted without doing more. But hence arose a quarrel between Olaf and Heg. They fought at Laxfit by Grim's river. There 7 men fell, but Heg was wounded to death, and his brother Kvig fell. But when Egill came home, Skallagrim said little about it. But Bera said Egill had in him the makings of a freebooter, and that 'twould be well so soon as he were old enough to give him a long ship. Then Egill made a stave. Thus counselled my mother, for me should they purchase a galley and good oars, to go forth a roving. So may I, high standing, a noble bark steering, hold course for the haven, hew down many foemen. When Egil was 12 years old, he was grown so big that there were but few men how so large and strong that he could not overcome in games. In his 12th winter he was often at games. Thord, Grani's son, was then 20 years old. He was very strong. As the winter wore on, it often chanced that the two, Egil and Thord, were matched against Skallagrim. And once in the winter it so befell that there was ball play at Borg, southwards in Sandvik. Thord and Egil were set against Skallagrim in the game, and he became weary before them, so that they had the best of it. But in the evening after sunset it began to go worse with Egil and his partner. Skallagrim then became so strong, and he caught up with Thord and dashed him down so violently that he was all bruised and at once got his bane. Then he seized Egil. Now there was a handmaid of Skallagrim's named Thorgerdr Brak, who had nursed Egil when a child. She was a big woman, strong as a man, and of magic cunning. Said Brak, "Dost thou turn thy shape-strength, Skallagrim, against thy son?" Whereat Skallagrim let Egil loose, but clutched at her. She broke away and took to her heels, with Skallagrim after her. So went they to the utmost point of Digraness. Then she leapt out from the rock into the water. Skallagrim hurled after her a great stone, which struck her between the shoulders, and neither ever came up again. The water there is now called Brackar Sound. But afterwards, in the evening, when they came home to Borg, Egil was very angry. Skallagrim and everybody else were set at table, but Egil had not yet come to his place. He went into the fire hall, and up to the man who there had the overseeing of work and the management of moneys for Skallagrim, and was most dear to him. Egil dealt him his death blow, then went to his seat. Skallagrim spoke not a word about it then, and thenceforward the matter was kept quiet. But father and son exchanged no word, good or bad, and so that winter passed. The next summer after this, Thorolf came out, as was told above. And when he had been in Iceland one winter, in the spring following he made ready his ship in Brackar Sound. But when he was quite ready, then one day Egil went to his father, and asked him to give him an outfit. "I wish," said he, "to go out with Thorolf." Skallagrim asked if he had spoken at all on that matter with Thorolf. Egil said he had not. Skallagrim bade him do that first. But when Egil started the question with Thorolf, he said, "'Tis not likely that I shall take you abroad with me. If your father thinks he cannot manage you here in his house, I have no confidence for this to take you with me to foreign lands. For it will not do to show there such temper as you do here." "Maybe," said Egil, "neither of us will go." In the night came on a furious gale, a southwester. But when it was dark, and now flood tide, Egil came where the ship lay. He went out onto the ship, and outside the tenting, he cut asunder the cables that were on the seaward side. Then, hurrying back to land by the bridge, He at once shot out the bridge and cut the cables that were upon land. Then the ship was driven out into the firth. But when Thorolf's men were aware that the ship was adrift, they jumped into the boat. But the wind was far too strong for them to get anything done. The ship drifted over to Duckkyle and on the islands there, but Egil went home to Borg. And when people got to know of the trick that Egil had played, the more part blamed it. Egil said he should before long do Thorolf more harm and mischief, if he would not take him away. But then others mediated between them, and the end was that Thorolf took Egil, and he went out with him that summer. When Thorolf came on shipboard, at once taking the axe which Skallagrim had given into his hands, he cast it overboard into the deep, so that it never more came up. Thorolf went his way in the summer, and his voyage sped well, and they came out to Hordaland. He at once stood northwards to Sogn. There it had happened in the winter that Brynjolf had fallen sick and died, and his sons had shared the heritage. Thord had Ireland, the estate on which his father had dwelt. He had become a liegeman of the king, and was made a baron. Thord's daughter was named Randveig, the mother of Thord and Helgi, this Thord being father of Ingeridr, whom King Olaf had to wife. Helgi was father of Brynjolf, father of Sirk, Sogn, and Svein. Thank you for watching. Please like and share this video, hit the subscribe button and notification bell, and feel free to ask me any question in the comments section below. Due to the sacred nature of these videos, I would prefer to keep them ad-free. Please help me to do that by clicking the Patreon link in the description box below and make a donation to this channel. Or buy me a coffee with the Ko-fi tip jar link. PayPal is accepted. Every dollar counts. Thank you for your support.